Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to another video by me, Val. And today we're going to be tackling a very nuanced topic, guys. So I need your full attention here. Very, very excited to be trying to convey this topic to you. I have alluded to this topic in previous videos before. Today I'm going to try to get a little bit more granular on this specific aspect of it. And I really realized that, my channel is about holistic living, and holistic living is all about balance. We need to think of ourselves as almost like these little Sims characters. If anybody on the side of the screen has played The Sims before, then you know that you create these people, you design these people, this family, and you create a whole life for them, and you've got to keep all these bars, filled up so that they don't lose their minds or die of hunger or fall asleep in the middle of a room. They got the energy, they got the hunger, they got the fun, they got the social bar. I really see us as exactly that. We really need to see ourselves as human beings in this fashion. And so the topic is, when does something healthy become unhealthy, and vice versa? When does something unhealthy become something that could actually be healthy? And I'm just going to use a little example from my life. When I gave up drinking, I just went full on into fitness, just absolutely going ham every single day. Sometimes, well, actually, most of the days, twice a day, 6 to 7 days a week. So I was definitely overdoing it. There's no doubt in my mind that I was overdoing it. And why was I doing this? Because I was attempting to distract myself from my feelings on the inside. I just constantly needed to be engaged in heavy activity. And I'm not saying that there's no way of doing this in a mindful way, and there obviously is. And it was definitely an upgrade from me drinking myself into a coma every other day. 100%. No doubt about it. But it was still coming from a very unhealthy place, a very unhealthy motivation. On the outside, to everybody watching, I'm putting on muscle, I'm getting healthier. I was also doing intermittent fasting, so I thought that was healthy. But the truth is also, if you overdo intermittent fasting, your metabolism can slow down, and you actually end up putting on a lot of fat. And that's actually what happened to me. I put on a lot of bulk, and at first things looked healthy, but the motivations behind the scenes were not so much. Okay, I was getting injured. I was definitely in a lot of pain. I wasn't stretching, or wasn't stretching a lot at least, and neglecting that side of fitness, which is the recovery. And often your best gains are made during the recovery phase. So I was, hurting myself very much. I made tremendous progress in my strength skills and all this because I got into calisthenics. I won't lie, it definitely helped me, definitely saved me from the abusive alcoholism that I was engaging in. But eventually it caught up with me. It wasn't a sustainable way of living my life. So when does something healthy become unhealthy? Well, something healthy becomes unhealthy when it starts becoming, one or two things in your existence, of the one or two of those bars on your sim, start becoming the obsession, start becoming the fixation, and at the cost of everything else. Every one of those bars. So I'm not observing really the fun aspect, or the energy aspect. I wasn't letting myself recover. The hunger aspect, I was overdoing the intermittent fasting, just eating one big meal at the end of the day, which wasn't the healthiest thing in the long term. It's something that I think should be used sparingly. But and I was injuring myself. I was hurting myself behind the scenes. I was very stressed. Okay, I was also counting calories and being super obsessed with that and super regimented. And it led to me being very anxious, very stressed, and not as happy as I could have been, right? And a lot of people do this. They do this with work. They neglect their sleep. They do this with routine. They neglect their fun. They neglect their social aspect because they're constantly engaged in productive endeavors, right? So these healthy things work and routine and all this can also become detrimental, because they end up stressing you out, because you're not taking care of the other aspects of your existence. You're not taking care of you as a whole, not acknowledging that you have these other needs, right? And so, exactly that. Whereas, when you look at the Mediterraneans and the way they live their lifestyles, they're kind of like unique in terms of Western society. I guess when you talk about Western society these days, you're referring to sort of the American dream and the way that the Americans go about these things. And I'm sure, like America, I think there's going to be a bit of a blowback now, the productivity and all this. You hear about these bankers doing 22-hour shifts of work on Adderall and all of these productive drugs, right? But the Mediterraneans, they are much more about the enjoying life. It's not so much about the rat race. It's not so much about this productivity for the productivity's sake, right? I'm sure there are some within the Mediterranean that are like that, but the Mediterranean culture as a whole is more about balance, right? So when you look at the Mediterraneans, what do the Mediterraneans do, guys? They actually will have a pastry with every meal that they eat. They'll have a glass of wine or two. Sometimes every day. Wine is a huge part of the culture. And on the outside, you look at this and it's like, this isn't the healthiest behavior. It's not the healthiest by metric standards. You getting more calories in and all this kind of thing. But what do they do? If you actually look at the Mediterraneans, they're not very stressed out people. They're pretty relaxed about existence. They're not obsessed about diets and like tracking their calories, because tracking calories can become stressful. This has been shown to be the case. When the US, I think, made it mandatory to have calorie counts next to their menu items to tell you how many calories are in the food, obesity rates actually went up. They didn't go down. And why is this? I believe because of that sort of whiplash effect. People are obsessing over how many calories they're putting in their system, sort of at the cost of everything else, not realizing that this hyperfixation on this one aspect is actually leading you to give more energy to the act of eating unhealthy, because you're so in opposition to eating unhealthy that you end up getting this freaking blowback and falling back into overindulgence. The Mediterraneans support balance in that respect. They're not stressing out about the one pastry they eat. They're not stressing out about the glass of wine they drink. They're just kind of going about their lives. They lead they still lead a relatively healthy life. They're walking everywhere. If you go to Portugal, for instance, Portugal has tons of hills. Lisbon is full of hills. Okay, and people are walking everywhere. They're not really driving. Mostly they're taking public transport or walking. So that little bit of activity every day supports this sort of healthy existence. It doesn't even matter if they smoke a few cigarettes or they do the pastry or the wine. They end up being more stress-free than that person who is obsessed with being healthy, obsessed with being fit, obsessed with all this at the cost of all of their other existences, the other aspects of existence. They actually even go, as like some people on the internet, will go so far as to say, I have no friends and this is why, and they're proud of it. That's not something you should be proud of, guys. We are social beings, and you're neglecting a very important aspect of your life. I find the same thing with celibacy YouTubers at that, where the nofap community, it's even in return. Sex is a part of your life, guys. And if you neglect that, you're gonna have some trouble. It's gonna just build up, and it's gonna cause a whiplash effect at some point. And who wants this constant seesaw back and forth between being healthy, being unhealthy, being healthy, being unhealthy? Because now you're so attached to a certain way of being that as soon as you behave in any other way, you feel that cognitive dissonance. And that cognitive dissonance is like signaling to you that something, that your ego has taken some sort of blow. It's like you've done something you don't want to do, and now you feel bad about it. You feel guilty about it. And we shouldn't feel ashamed or guilty about any behavior that we are doing. We should just be like, okay, regret is a thing. I wasn't supposed to do that. I'll do better next time. I wasn't supposed to do that. We're gonna do better. We're gonna do better next time. But I believe balance really is the key at the end of the day. Don't attribute too much energy when you step out of the order that you've laid to yourself. A little bit of chaos is not a bad thing. A little bit of spontaneity is not going to kill you guys, right? And if you're getting obsessed with being orderly and you can't have any tolerance towards being disorderly or being spontaneous, you see disorderly as a negative connotation for spontaneity sometimes. If you have no tolerance for something else that isn't the typical you, then it's just a recipe for disaster, in my opinion, because you're aligning yourself, you're living an unsustainable model. So, momentarily, guys, step out of your bounds a little bit. Have a glass of wine. Have a pastry. Do something spontaneous. Don't be so rigid and organized the entire time. I'm also telling you, if you do not want to go, like for example, if you have a problem with drinking, maybe don't go have a drink. That's okay as well. I've got a very nuanced point of view on this that I will bring up in another video, because I was what I would say and consider an alcoholic, and I've gotten to my point where I have a very, very good relationship, you could say, with alcohol now. But it's not all, like, my viewpoints on this are not for everybody. But I am saying step outside your bounds every once in a while. Stay up late. If you're obsessed with going to bed at a certain time, stay up late one day. Go out with your friends. Have some fun. If you're obsessed with your diet, if you love your diet, great. Go have a pastry. Have a cheat day every once in a while. Okay, if you're obsessed with fitness, take some time off of the fitness. We shouldn't get so attached to this methods of behavior as something important. I will use, for example, at the moment where I am now, I injured my ear. Okay, and fitness is still a huge part of my life, but I injured my ear almost 6 weeks ago, and I'm not allowed to do any exercise. I'm not allowed to pick up anything heavy. I'm not allowed to strain myself in any way. And, I'm glad that I'm not hyperfixated on exercise anymore as a way to keep myself sane, because I would be suffering right now. Instead, I'm actually not. I'm actually really much enjoying my life. I'm making more videos. I have more time to make content. So I'm really looking at the golden thread. In many ways, my ear is what prompted me to start making videos again. So I'm looking at the positive side. But if I was hyperfixated on one aspect of my being the be-all and end-all of my mental health, then we'd be in serious trouble. I'd be freaking out. Oh God, I put on a little bit of weight. Oh God, I was on cortisone as well, so I put on a little bit of weight as a result of that. I'd be freaking out. Sometimes I do, guys. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be like, I don't really like this extra little bit of fat that I have on my waist. But I don't make a big deal about it. I know that I'm going to get back to working out and everything's going to go back to normal and it's going to be okay. So step out of your bounds a little bit, guys. Step outside of your rigid routines. Do something that isn't you. And just get used to upgrading your tolerance for uncertainty in certain aspects, because for example, you should be able to navigate low energy states as well as high energy states. Getting obsessed with ordering your life and controlling your life so that you're only ever in high energy states is just, again, a recipe for disaster, because you are going to wake up one day and you're not going to feel 100% yourself, because that's just what life is. Okay? There's going to be emotions. What are you going to do? Again, if someone passes away, you have all your order and all that kind of stuff means nothing. You're going to be in a low energy state. You're going to be down. So upgrade your tolerance for that. Upgrade your tolerance for uncertainty. Upgrade your tolerance for chaos. You don't have to do it in massive doses. You don't have to go completely off the rails. But do it every once in a while. Even the Romans had Saturnalia, where they turned everything upside down, topsy-turvy, and masters became slaves, slaves became masters. Look into it, guys. Saturnalia. Big festival at the end of the year in the Roman calendar. So I think they did that for a very specific reason. Sometimes people need to let off steam. Don't let the steam build up to the point where it is unreasonable and you cannot deal with it. And then that causes a real problem for your life in getting back on track. Let a little bit of steam off every once in a while. Have a pastry, drink a glass of wine, break your routine, enjoy life, and you will be a hell of a lot less stressed.